What's up, and welcome back to the Kinda Funny Gamescast. Of course, I'm Tim Geddes, and I am joined by the new face of video games, Blessing Adeoye.
What's up, Tim?
Joining us for the first time officially on the Gamescast. Well, I guess first time in studio.
Yeah,
first
yeah.
time, because you did the Final Fantasy 14 episode with
sure
us.
did.
It's the one and only Michael Higham.
Hey, what to do, baby?
We're talking Final Fantasy. Of course, we have to bring out
Again.
the dogs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very excited about this.
Yeah.
And rounding out the crew today, the one and only Roger Pokorny, but he's at home, so I have to look at the wall.
Me Gungaga.
Oh, God. Welcome to the memes, Roger. Welcome to the memes. We're going to be talking a lot about Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion today. We're going to do the review of it, spoiler-free, and then we're going to get into a full spoiler cast for it as well for all the people that want to know what's going on, what's been changed, what hasn't been changed, what's going on in Zach's world. You know what I'm talking about? Of course, we do this show each and every week. It's called the Kinda Funny Gamescast, where we get together to talk about video games and all the things that we love about them, or sometimes don't so much love about them. We'll get into all of that right here. Of course, you can get the show on youtube.com/kindafunnygames or roosterteeth.com, but you can also get it as a podcast by searching your favorite podcast service for Kinda Funny Gamescast, and we will be right there for you. If you want to get the show ad-free and you want to watch live as we record it, you got to go to patreon.com/kindafunny. Just like our Patreon producers, Delaney Twining, One Up Pest Control, Gwinnett, Brian Cheney, Alex Gradle, Jason L., the nanobiologist, Derek Garrick, Donald Eccles, and Jason L. have done. Thank you all so very, very much for tossing your dollars our way. But if you don't have dollars to toss our way, that's totally cool. When you're out there on the Epic Game Store, use code KINDAFUNNY, and at no extra cost to you, we get some dollar bills, y'all. And that's pretty damn sweet, if I do say so myself. Today, we're brought to you by the Fixture S2, MeUndies, Policy Genius, and Shopify, but I'm going to get to all of that later. Now, Michael, I know we brought you on. Roger, I know we brought you on to talk about Crisis Core. But before we do that, last week, the biggest event of the year in video games happened, the Game Awards. We reacted to it. It was a fantastic time. But like we always do, we like to do predictions for the Game Awards. We usually do it in two different sections. Predict the winners and predict the announcements. And then, beautiful, beautiful people online tally it all up and decide, are we the winners? Cianon over on our Reddit has done that. So I want to go through all of that. But before I do that, Bless, I want to start with you. Michael, did you go to the Game Awards this year?
I didn't.
Have you ever been to the Game Awards?
I have not. I was supposed to go last year, but this is around the time Endwalker came out. So I was busy covering Endwalker, but also I went to the fucking hospital for a whole ass week. So I was in the middle of covering Endwalker for fanbuy.com. And then I spent a week in the hospital. I was supposed to go though. I had like a ticket and everything because at the time Fanbyte was doing a whole. You was on the Fanbyte live stream at the Game Awards, and I was watching from my hospital bed. I was like, oh shit, y'all represent me. I want to go. Like regardless, I have a lot of feelings about the Game Awards itself, and like, it could be this, it could be that, or whatever. But I think the most important thing for me is just being in a place with everyone else. Like that's probably like the most important thing, as I've spent a lot of time in games media. The most important part to me is going to events and just seeing people. And that's the thing I miss the most. That's my primary objective if I were to go. But, run it back next year.
Yep, 100%. I mean, there hasn't even been many in-person events. Like, there was Summer Game Fest and then essentially this. Like, there wasn't really much in between. But plus, you got to be there. What was that experience like?
It was great. So this is actually my second Game Awards, and this one was interesting because it was the first one where this one is open, right? Since the pandemic last year, it was a bit more contained in terms of mainly press, mainly media, mainly people that were nominated. This year it was way more people, and shout out to all the Kinda Funny best friends I got to meet at the Game Awards in person. It was one of those things where, because there's so many people, right? Like I'm having a conversation with somebody and then I see somebody walk up and they're like, hey, and I'm like, oh, this is how we Kinda Funny best friend. We talk for like 2 minutes and then another one will pop up and then another one will pop up. That I've not had that experience to that extent before. Like this was the event where I met the most Kinda Funny best friends actually in person. And also I met so many industry friends, people I follow online in person. And that alone was awesome. Being there in person for this one was awesome. But there was that part, there was that part deep down where I was like, man, I wish I could be in the room reacting, because when we got things like Hades 2, which we talked about a little bit in our predictions, right?
The entire office, popped off. Like everybody, obviously in here, Roger and friends, like out in the main room, like you could hear them yell and stuff like that. It was a fun moment to be in here.
Like between Armored Core, the From Software logo popping up, like I'm sure here it was dope as hell, but in the room where it's this big screen, you see like the boom, like the From Software logo on Armored Core. That was sick as hell. And yeah, like plenty of the announcements that happened, I thought were really great. But also, I think in terms of the announcements themselves, it was such a great reminder that we're pretty good at this when it comes to predictions and when it comes in. Like, you're gonna tabulate or whatever, and like I'm sure there's plenty of stuff we got wrong, but even being in the ballpark of us talking about Hades 2 and being like, I don't know, Hades 2, I can see it, I cannot see it, I can see it, and then it being there, right? Like calling Armored Core, calling all these different things. You know, I think that stuff was awesome. But yeah, for me, it is what Michael's talking about when it comes to the Game Awards, which is hanging out with people, seeing people again, sharing a space with people, like catching up, and having a good time. Like this Game Awards was absolutely awesome.
So I'm going to get to what those results were. I'm sure we are all waiting on bated breath. Thank you, Cianon, for making this all happen here. So we had the two different categories, the winners and the announcements. So the winners, the winner of the winners' predictions go like this. It was Greg, me, Andy, and Blessing that voted. In fourth place of the winners.
Probably me.
Blessing out of
I'm a contrarian, that's why.
With 10. With 10. Coming in at third place, Andy Cortez with 11 correct predictions. Coming in at second, Tim Geddes. It's me at 13. Greg at 16.
Wow.
He probably got like a debrief beforehand.
Oh, this is the winner.
Damn.
No. This is we did this like we did this the day the nominees were even announced.
Oh, right.
So like yeah,
Okay.
we did that. We did this shit fucking live. There was no thinking about it. We just had to go.
Wow.
So yeah, Greg won that with 16. Announcements. In last place, Greg Miller
Good.
with the grand total of 0 correct answers.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I thought
In
it was
second to last place, predictions Poppy. Blessing out of you, dude. You're not doing too great
Dang it.
with 0.5. And even that, I'm going to say debatable when
Which
we
one
get
was that
into
one?
it.
What was
I'll
that?
get into it. I'll get into it. But it is debatable, motherfuckers. And then coming in second place, Andy Cortez with 1 correct prediction.
Armored Core.
I don't remember which one.
I'll
think
assume it's Armored Core.
And in first place, it's your boy.
Tim motherfucking Geddes.
With only 2. With
It's
only 2.
Super Giant and
So
there's
yeah.
another one.
So going through a couple tips of the hats to give off. Barrett for guessing Stray for best debut indie. Everyone else guessed Vampire Survivors. Blessing for predicting we would see Tlu on PC, and only that, against Greg's prediction of Factions. Everyone, you all got 11 points last year, except Greg, who got none because of the baby. So well done. We did better
The
this year.
baby?
Because of his
The rapper.
Oh, I was like, damn, y'all had the baby in here? TFTI.
So, because of this, the overall winners of 2022's Game Awards predictions in last place with 10.5 points, Blessing Adeoye Jr.
I saw it coming.
In third place, Andy Cortez with 12 points. And the winner, Greg Miller
Wow.
with 16 points.
Ooh.
Wow.
Me in second with 15. He beat me by 1 point overall.
damn.
I hate to see it.
Here's why I keep messing up these
Mhm.
predictions. One is I keep trying to go big or go home when it comes to the winners predictions, because we come to categories like best adaptation, for example, right, where everybody's like,
Sonic.
let's go. I mean, everybody's like, Sonic must win, must win, but you guys end up predicting Arcane, and I'm like, Arcane's probably gonna win, but I'm gonna predict Cyberpunk Edge Runners just in case, because if I got that one, guess what?
You get the point.
I'm a point up against
Yeah.
everybody else.
Yeah.
I keep trying to do that, and that keeps fucking me over. And then also for the predictions, which I know you're gonna get into, I put in too much detail, and I keep trying not to do that, but I keep doing it anyway because it's fun. I like adding in unnecessary
You
details
got
for
that makes
predictions.
this fun because it's
I like
too
to
easy.
spice things up.
Because the thing you got 0.5 for was that you predicted we get a new Street Fighter 6 trailer and a release date for April. Congratulations, Bless. There was the Street Fighter 6 trailer. The release
coulda
date
got a
was
full
June.
point.
Yeah, that's the thing is, listen,
Damn.
if I didn't say April, I would have got the full point.
But yeah,
it's
exactly.
my
But that's
fault for
so
being bold.
Boring.
It's my fault for
Boring.
being
You know
bold.
what?
out
Blessing,
here.
you keep the detail, because one year it'll work out of the weird details of giving you those like half points and stuff like that. In a year that you need it, where you're gonna win half a point above Greg Miller, you know.
Yeah, but it's just the fact that, like, you know, I could have called The Last of Us PC, and I did call The Last of Us PC. I could have left it at that, and I could have made that my official prediction. I could have called, we'll get a Tekken trailer that'll reveal a new character. Cool. Like, we know that's gonna happen.
That's
like,
not
come on,
fun.
we know that's
Gotta
gonna
have
happen.
fun. Keep it
get my-
spicy, everybody.
Let me get my Duffy. Let's get spicy.
Spice it up. Some other stats for you. Gamescast made predictions for 22 out of 39 categories, which surprises me. Like there was that many we didn't do?
39 characters.
Because there was a lot. We didn't do a lot of the
Categories.
esports ones or the like,
Oh,
community focused
sure, yeah.
ones, but like that's a lot. Of the categories predicted, 18 were correctly predicted by at least one person. The only 4 that were not correctly predicted were Content Creator of the Year, Best Sports / Racing, Best Multiplayer, and Best Action.
Oh.
Okay.
Wait,
yeah,
what
because
won best
Splatoon-
action? Because it was some bullshit, wasn't it?
Was it Bayonetta?
Bayonetta won Best
3,
Action.
Oh, okay, never mind.
That's
I can see that.
that's not bullshit.
I mean,
It's
Sifu still
bullshit
should have
over
won.
Sifu,
Yeah.
motherfuckers. There were 6 categories where we all guessed the same winner, and all 6 of these we were all correct. Unless you count Best Debut Indie, where everyone but Barrett incorrectly predicted Vampire Survivors. Because Barrett predicted Stray. Because he's a cat guy in a cat world. Doing cat things.
I have
with
a
some cat
dog.
girls.
Wait, what did you say? Cat girls?
Don't
Michael
talk
only
about
heard
cat
cat
girls.
girls.
Real quick.
My ears
Stray,
perked up.
correct me if I'm wrong. Stray won every category it was in except for Game of the Year, right?
One, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
wild.
it won best debut
Stray.
Good
and
for them.
A salty good for Stray from me.
Yeah, I'm a cat person,
But are you a Stray person?
but Stray's I.
What do you think, Raj? Did you play Stray?
I played a little bit of Stray. I'm like, this is not worth it. This is not worth the time. I love cats. I have a cat. There's a cat shoe right behind me.
wow.
I love my cat so much, but I'm just like, this is not.
Can
this
I-
is not
I'm
the,
I'm
this
just
is not
again.
the thing that I'm looking
It's
for.
Journey 2.0, and y'all are just
Yeah.
cowards.
No, it is not.
Oh,
Wait,
whoa,
what?
wait, relax, my guy.
Journey,
Nah.
also
Yeah, bro.
overrated. You know what I mean? Like, let's
You said
all-
overrated?
What?
Let's all. We talked
He's not
about
wrong
this.
about that.
You are maniac.
We had
Whose
our-
fans is this?
We had our hot take episodes of Gamescast, and I think that was the one that I was most proud of. Where I was like, no, I feel this deep down in my heart. We need to bring that back, by the way.
When
I've
did
been
you-
holding out. I've been like building up hot takes for that podcast.
Oh,
When did you
You've
play
been
it?
holding
though?
out on hot takes.
I played Journey.
Yeah.
What up? What was that, Roger?
You've been holding-
Shut
you've
your
been
mouth.
Holding out. Okay.
I played Journey when it came to PS Plus. So like 2016, maybe 2015.
Okay.
There were still people online. I ran into them. It was alright.
Did you already know like what the deal was going into it, or you're like,
Which
shit?
deal? Like the fact that it was multiplayer?
Yeah,
or-
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I knew that loosely. Yeah.
All right.
Well, there
So
you go.
eco.
That has been our predictions for this year. But now we're getting into the topic of the show, which is Crisis Core and our review of Crisis Core Reunion. Now, before we even get into it, Michael, I want to start with you. We're going to go around the table. What is your history with Final Fantasy VII, with Crisis Core, the original, all of that?
So, Final Fantasy VII for many kids, I guess my age, is formative because I played Final Fantasy 6 and 4 on the SNES. This is all my brother's stuff because he's older than me, so I had access to kind of some of the newer stuff. He had a job, and I was like a dumbass little kid. So, but Final Fantasy VII was a formative game for me and for many other people because of the depth of its characters and its world, and going through that whole journey and just how emotional it was to see these cutscenes too, and entering the 3D era of Final Fantasy with the PS1 was a very big deal. So that game was very important to me. And then going into Crisis Core, I thought about this a lot, about what made Crisis Core so special is because there are a lot of places in Final Fantasy VII that were finally fully realized in 3D. And I remember on PSP exploring these parts of Midgar and going to Junon and like these places I saw in the pre-rendered backgrounds in FF7, and then now playing as Zack, exploring these in full 3D. It felt like this revolutionary step for Final Fantasy VII as a whole. I mean, we had Advent Children before that, and that was cool and all, but like I want to play something in full 3D with these places that I know and love fully realized, and Crisis Core kind of delivered on that. And plus the novelty of being a PSP game where this played a lot very close to a full console game was kind of mind-blowing on PSP, right? So, and also the story of Zack Fair, because you can, if I recall correctly, you can totally miss his story in FF7. The thing was like, go back to the Shinra Mansion and Disc 3 or something, and then you can see the cutscene of Zack's final moments. And yeah, like luckily I was able to see that when watching my brother play through it. I'm like, oh, who's this guy? I have no idea. And then to have a game that not only explored a piece of FF7 that was kind of a mystery, but to explore Zack in such a in-depth way and to build out his character as kind of this happy-go-lucky dude who is, very different from anyone I would think of in the FF7 universe, which is a very oppressive world, and it's dark and like bad shit happens all the time. And you have Zack, who's kind of mistakenly dedicated to Shinra, but as you see him grow, he kind of you understand that his dedication isn't necessarily to Shinra, but to the people around him. And to see that in a PSP game, fully realized, again, like I said, was revolutionary. So Crisis Core is very important to me.
Bless, what about you?
So in terms of my journey with Final Fantasy 7 overall, right? Like I think I've told the story in the podcast before where I wasn't a PS1 kid. I grew up with an N64, and I remember growing up and having the conversations with friends about what's the best game ever. All right, it's either Ocarina of Time or it's Final Fantasy 7. And me being an N64 kid, right, I always fought for Ocarina of Time, right? Whereas my friend Stevie was always like, no, man, it's Final Fantasy 7, Cloud, the Aerith, all this stuff, right? And that was for a long time my familiarity with Final Fantasy 7, right? Just understanding that people held it up to this high standard, but also me playing Final Fantasy games that weren't Final Fantasy 7 and not really being able to get into them, right? Like I remember trying Final Fantasy 13 on PS3, didn't really get into it. Kingdom Hearts, I know isn't a Final Fantasy game, but I remember playing through Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, or playing through 1, enjoying it, playing part of 2, and like not falling in love with it, and kind of just using that as my realization of, all right, I like these games, I don't love these games. And even there were times where I played Final Fantasy 7 on emulator that like I'll play through allegedly I'll play I'll play through the initial area and like fall off for whatever reason. I think partly because the random encounters, it being dated, all this stuff. In 2020, played through Final Fantasy 7 Remake because those trailers sold me. Me talking to folks like you and other friends who are super into Final Fantasy 7 sold me, and I viewed Remake as a way for me to get in at the ground floor. All right, you're retelling me this game, the story in this modern way. Cool, let me play through it. Let me enjoy it that way. And Final Fantasy 7 Remake made me fall in love with the world, right? I fell in love with the music, fell in love with the characters, fell in love with the world building, loved Midgard as a setting, all that stuff. And I enjoyed it so much that I went back and I played a percentage of Final Fantasy 7, right? Ended up not beating it because there are other games to play, but I played like maybe like 15 to 20 hours of Final Fantasy 7 and got all the way up to like around Rocket Town. So it's somewhere around that area. I'm sure you guys know. Yeah. But haven't returned to it since. Crisis Core is one that I've heard about. Heard about from that same friend Stevie who loved Final Fantasy 7, right? Because
Stevie
was a fucking nerd about Final Fantasy 7. But yeah, I would hear about it from it. Stevie and James are also the ones that would always have Advent Children on the TV playing. And they would always
right.
On loop.
They would always play, like, basically they'd watch the church fight scene over and over again from
piano themed.
No, rewind.
Honestly,
This shit's fire. Hey, you're watching? You're watching?
As somebody who wasn't like that into Final Fantasy 7, that church fight scene in Advent Children was fucking fire.
Tifa flying up against the wall, like Spider-Man posing with the slow-mo flash.
That shit's
Oh, yeah,
hard.
yeah.
That shit is hard.
And super hard. And so, Crisis Core this time around has been exciting for me because I've been kind of craving more Final Fantasy 7 content. And so that pretty much brings me to today as somebody who beat Crisis Core about an hour ago.
I love that
Oh, shit.
so
Yeah.
much.
Wow.
Roger Pokorny, what about you? What's your history with Final Fantasy 7?
Yeah, I mean, my Final Fantasy history in general is pretty young. I started, my first ever Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy 15, which I played like 2 years ago. Like I played this game, I was like, I love this game. It was on Game Pass. It was during the pandemic, so I was like, let me try this out. Fell in love with it surprisingly, and then like I'm like, okay, what do I want next, right? Do I go back to original Final Fantasy 7? Final Fantasy 7 Remake Intergrade was around that time, so I was like, let me try it out. So fell in love with that. So I was really excited for Crisis Core. It's a game that I've seen before. I didn't really know what it was until I talked to you, Tim. So I'm like really new to like the whole Final Fantasy 7 just lore in general. Like I don't even know what Advent Children is, gotta be honest.
Movie.
But I fit it's a movie, okay. I don't even know where that lands in the whole Final Fantasy 7 universe, but I just finished Crisis Core, put 13 hours into it, and I'm excited to talk about it because this is the first time for me in general with Zach and all of these characters. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Crisis Core for me is one of the definitive games of my life. Like Crisis Core specifically is one of my favorites. Even at the time, I knew it was ridiculous, and even at the time, I knew that it wasn't perfect. But there was something about the time and place, 2007, me being senior in high school, where it was that era of first getting into anime, first having the ability to allegedly be able to watch any anime you wanted. You're not just limited to watching Pokemon on WB after school or Sailor Moon, or then later Cartoon Network, whatever's on late night, and kind of just getting what they give you. But it was like, oh, I can actually get to seek things out and choose it myself. And with that, Final Fantasy X was actually my first Final Fantasy. I don't have an older brother or anything, so I didn't have the luxuries of that, and I'm really sad about that. But I had a Stevie in my life. His name was Curran. It still is. He's not dead. And Final Fantasy VII was his favorite game. I mean, Final Fantasy VII and Ocarina of Time are to this day tied for his 2 favorite games. So he's not the most original person, but hey, that's good taste. Yeah. And he was like, Tim, like, I know you love Final Fantasy X, but like, you got to go back. You got to play 7.
Yep.
And I did, and I absolutely loved it. Loved the characters, loved everything about it and the world. The opening of that game is just fantastic, and I feel like a lot of people kind of fall off after that scene because just it's so tight. Like the entire Midgar thing is so good, and that's why I think remake works as well as it does. Is like the Midgar section can be its own story, and remake got our Game of the Year at KindaFunny in 2020. So that's wild, but I think very well deserved in a lot of ways. But with Crisis Core, when it came out, and this was a year or so after Advent Children, which Roger is this fully CG movie. So Final Fantasy Spirits Within was a movie that they made in the very early 2000s, which was them really being like, yo, everyone loves our cinematics. What if we just made a movie? And this was like in the early days of CG movies, like Toy Story and Toy Story 2 were kind of like it. And then boom, we got Spirits Within. And how was Spirits Within, Michael?
I don't know. It was just like at the time I saw it and thought, okay, that's cool. It felt more like a tech demo in a way to show off like how dope animation can be at the time. At least like that style of animation where it's like kind of photorealistic-ish. But it didn't really strike anything like within me.
Yeah?
Like
There's no spirits within.
There's no spirit within it for me, but I feel differently about Advent Children because it explores different things, obviously.
And that's the thing. Spirits Within very much felt like a tech demo. It felt like it had Final Fantasy in name alone, not in substance.
Sure,
it was way more sci-fi, and like I never liked it. It wasn't for me. But then they announced Advent Children, the compilation of Final Fantasy VII project, which Raj, a little history lesson here for you, is 10 years after Final Fantasy VII. They're like, we're going to do a compilation of different projects in Final Fantasy VII. So Advent Children was the movie. There was Before Crisis, which was a mobile game.
Last Order.
There was Last Order, which was an OVA anime episode thing they had. And then there was Crisis Core. If you look there, and then Dirge of Cerberus, which is the horrible PlayStation 2 action game starring Vincent Valentine.
Funny enough that I saw Dirge of Cerberus. I remember this clearly. It was like 2007 at a GameStop, and it was like on sale on PS2, and I never heard of it. And I texted Stevie, and I was like, "Hey, Stevie, there's this Final Fantasy VII game that I've never heard you bring up called Dirge of Cerberus
There's a reason.
at GameStop. Should I buy it?" And he's like, "No, don't buy that game." And I was like, "All right, cool."
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. But if you notice there, though, in the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, Advent Children, AC, Before Crisis, BC,
Oh,
Crisis Core, CC,
Ooh.
Dirge of Cerberus,
DC.
D, Hey, there we go. And now we got Ever Crisis coming.
EC.
It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing, motherfuckers.
Damn.
But anyways, when Advent Children was being hyped up, I'm sure me and Michael were in a very similar spot where it's like, holy shit, forget whatever Spirits Within did. They're doing a Final Fantasy movie, and it's Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
And it is a sequel to the video games. And we're about to see our characters how we thought they were in the video game in 1997. And that is exactly what they delivered. Was the movie quality? That's debatable. And the more I watch, the more of an adult I am to be able to critically look at it. No, it wasn't really that good.
Yeah.
But to be a 17-year-old kid that was obsessed, getting into anime, loving Final Fantasy VII as characters, and seeing all this, all of a sudden, this was an anime Final Fantasy like brought to life in front of me. And I remember watching the Tifa fight scene in the church and being like, imagine if we got a game
like that. Yep.
Can you fucking imagine if we can get a game like that?
Wow.
And next year, we got Final Fantasy Crisis Core on the PSP. And it was the closest thing to that you could imagine at the time. Again, time and place thing where you're playing a portable game, but this was one of the first times that a PSP game didn't feel like a console game being shrunk down to be shittily ported to it.
Yep.
It was like, this felt like a meaty console-like experience that's exclusive to handheld. Unfortunately, until now, has been limited and stuck in the past on the PSP. So playing through it, it is the first kind of seeds of the action-based Final Fantasy titles that are now kind of the standard when you look at Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy Remake for sure, for 7, like all that. So Crisis Core was always super important to me because it felt like a dream come true game where I got to play as just like, in my opinion, the cooler version of Cloud. I always liked Zach more. I liked his positive attitude.
Yeah.
I was I'm all about you. Loved the soundtrack of the game.
Oh,
Loved that it
God.
was just like, hey, you know what everyone's obsessed with right now? Sephiroth. Why? Because he's a badass and he has one wing. What do they call him? The one-winged angel. Well, guess what? Every motherfucker has wings. You get a wing, you get a wing, you get 2 wings sometimes. And I'm like, this is dope as hell.
Yeah.
Anyways, here we are.
Yeah.
20 years later.
Finally, we got a full remake, not in the sense of FF7 remake, because this is we were talking beforehand that this is very true to that PSP game, and that's fine. Like, I think that a lot of people who didn't get to touch Crisis Core the first time around, obviously there's very limited ways to play it. They finally get a full meaty version that is faithful to that, but has the modernizations of, like, I don't have to scroll through a side menu to attack, to use my regular attack and cast different spells, and it just feels like a modern game. And I think playing through Reunion, you see ways in which this is still a PSP game. I think there's like some uncanny valley type things where, yes, this is high fidelity that almost looks close to how FF7 remake looks in terms of graphical fidelity, but some of the cutscenes are still choreographed in the same way. Like some of the stilted cutscenes where they're voiced now, but you have canned animations being used for it. But then you have some of the more directed cutscenes that still look fucking
Unrivaled
amazing.
to this day.
Yeah, like
The summon animations.
Yeah, the summon animations are redone, and then like watching the moment when Angeal like reveals who he truly is the first time to Zack, it's just like this really
Let's try
emotional
to
thing.
say spoiler free
sure.
for this.
My bad,
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, dude.
But moments like that, you just realize how ahead of the curve that some of this stuff was. I mean, we did get we had FF12 at the time, but there was something about Crisis Core itself that it felt like part of that Advent Children movie experience in some of those cutscenes. And the melodrama and the lengths to which this game, like maybe it overdoes it a little bit, but that's part of the charm, right? Especially with someone like Zack, who is kind of an over emotional person, and have these melodramatic cutscenes with all these different characters who you learn why he loved them so much and why that they were groups of friends, or like why Genesis and Angeal, like Sephiroth, they were a group together. And yes, a lot of those cutscenes were just so amazing at the time, and still are to this day.
Still are, man.
When Angeal and Sephiroth and Genesis were like on top of that structure in the.
It's iconic. I mean, it's just simply iconic.
Yeah.
And that was the moment that I kept trying to tell these guys, like, at least get there before you give up. Now, I do want to say, let's get this out of the way. Andy Cortez gave up on playing the game. He was not having a good time with it. He was this just doesn't hold up for me, so I'm done. I'm enjoying the cutscenes. There was a lot of hype here. I can't get past like the X, Y, and Z. So he's not here with us today because of those reasons. Totally valid, totally fair. So now, having said all that, I want to get into our actual thoughts of the game. Okay. I already put my review out last week with the TikTok. I officially reviewed it for KindaFunny, giving it a 3 out of 5 on our scale, which is okay. And I had the caveat there that it is a 5 out of 5 in my heart. I love this game for what it is, but being critical, being honest, it is just okay, especially in 2022. The upgrades that they made, I think, make the game the definitive best version to play. But I don't think that I can wholeheartedly recommend this to anybody. I do think that I would recommend it to anybody that enjoyed Final Fantasy VII Remake, and even with that, it's hey man, I do think it's worth playing through, and I think that like a lot of the story content and the drama and hype of it is worth it. But your results may vary on that.
Yeah,
and if it's not for you, I do not blame you at all. But I'm interested to get some more opinions on this. Bless, what about you?
Are we doing score and then talk?
Give your score and then talk through it.
So I'd probably give this a 3 out of 5. It's funny because if you had asked me yesterday before I picked the game back up, right? Because I'd also been in a place where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to finish this. I'm probably not going to finish this. I was around halfway through the game. I think I was in chapter 5, just about. If you asked me that, I probably would have been like, maybe a 2 out of 5, right? And I think that for me, that comes from the place of I made fun of Square Enix a lot when they were first promoting the game, because they called it a remaster, and I was like, this is not a remaster. Like this game was on PSP. There's no way there's no way you're taking that game and putting it on consoles, right? Like this is not a PSP game. And upon booting up the game, I was like, I apologize, Square Enix. You're right. You straight up took that PSP game and put it on modern consoles. And that comes with some modernizations, right? Especially in visuals. Like, it does not look like a PSP game, but when you play it in action, it really does feel like a handheld game from 2007, especially with how linear some of the areas are. I think it was about the second level where you're running through a foresty kind of area, and the way that the trees are overgrown, like to kind of highlight this super duper linear path. I'm like, this is literally a hallway that I'm running through, and that doesn't take away from the original game because I understand why those concessions were there on the PSP game. But when I pick it up as a PS5 game, that's where it becomes I was not expecting this. I was expecting you guys to try and smoothen those edges a little bit more and try to make this feel like a experience that could be original to PS5. It's not that, and I don't want to fault the game for not being that because that very obviously is not their vision for it. But for me, as somebody who's coming into Crisis Core for the first time and being in the audience that played through 7 Remake, wants more of that world, wants to exist in that world more, right? I have to come from the perspective of, all right, like, how is my experience with Crisis Core in 2022 as somebody who's jumping into it for the first time? And it was hard. Like, it was rough to first play through the game, especially in the first half of it. Come the second half, there were some really cool story bits, really cool cutscenes, really cool character moments, really cool world building stuff that had me engaged. So much so that, yesterday you called me up, Tim. You're like, hey, we're doing the review tomorrow. It's going to be a spoiler cast. If you want to finish it, you can finish it. If you don't, let me know. We can find somebody else, yada, yada. And I was like, all right, let me do this. I'm going to try and play 3 chapters today, 2 chapters tomorrow. We'll see. If I drop off, I drop off. And I started that process at 6 p.m. I looked at the time. Later on, it was 12:30 in the morning. And I was like, why am I still playing this video game? Like, how in the world did I end up here that I'm still playing Crisis Core? And I think that really was just the fact that Final Fantasy VII, in general, just Final Fantasy VII, has such a dope-ass universe. Like, I really love this world. I really love existing in this world. I love the music. I love the like, lore stuff. I love what materia is. I love the summons. Like, I think all of it is dope as hell. And like, even going back to the music for a second, there are like some music cues in this game where I'm like, dude,
fucking music.
Like, this feels like it's Disney level of wow. Like, there's a moment where Sephiroth's thing kicks in, and it's like, god damn, like, how does this go hard every single time? Like, I heard Sephiroth's theme growing up right on YouTube and other places, and like, that shit still hits hard when you're playing it, or when you run into when it plays in the game when you're playing through it for the first time. And so moments like that, I think, still put it in this place where it feels special. But then, I think some of the story stuff and how they come around to these are these character reveals that you expect that, like, I don't know if I should be getting as somebody who like doesn't know the entire lore and the entire story of Final Fantasy VII yet. Either way, like, experiencing them through this game, I thought was really fun, really interesting, and really cool, and I really enjoyed it. But I think it is hampered back by a bit of the ways in which the game feels dated, right? The combat is very much hack and slash, go through the motions. There are elements of it that I do like. I like the materia fusion, where you can take 2 items or 2 pieces of materia, fuse them together, and make something new. I think that's a really cool system. I like how applying your materias and your different spells work, because it really is, you hold L1 and you have a list of magic that you can use, whether it be fire, curing yourself, ice, whatever, or you have like attacks you can use that both use up a different meter, right? And the attacks can be elemental, right? So you can have like the fire blade attack, the ice blade, thunder blade, whatever. And then once you get further into it, you have even more spells that I think are interesting, and that I felt by the time I got to the end of the game, I had kind of created my own playstyle based on the spells that I really liked. And so I think I want to commend that, because I did, at the end of the day, I had fun with it. But there are things like the roulette system that they have, where you are getting just random buffs based on how you roll, and the roll is just happening during the fight. And I think it's an interesting way to do it, but it's also chaotic, and it's also like it's a lot. And I'm gonna let you guys get into that once we get to it. But there are sometimes during the roulette, you'll get like a special summon ability or a special limit break ability, and you activate it, and it's a fade to black, fade back in, automated cutscene that's happening elsewhere, not in the actual environment. That's
cool.
And it cuts back.
It just looks dope.
And honestly, like I played games back in 2007, and I totally understand how in the time that would have been dope as hell.
Yep.
Right? I played Dragon Ball Z Budokai. I remember doing a special move, and it like did the transition into a whole thing. So I understand where that comes from.
Yeah.
But doing it in 2022 is so jarring and so weird.
It is,
and I
yeah.
kind of
I
have to
agree
call
with
it
you.
out as like a thing of like, oh man, I wish y'all found a way to make this a bit more smoother, because it does slow down the experience as well, right? Like it is the thing of, all right, let me go through this cutscene. You can't skip it if you want to.
Yeah. I feel like it's like an all-out attack in a Persona game, I guess.
Yeah.
Yo, you know what's wild is back on the PSP version, if you rolled for a summon or rolled for a summon or a limit break, it automatically goes. You have no
You don't get to
control
choose.
over
Oh,
it.
that's so
it just
funny.
it just goes.
Oh, that's
and
really
like,
funny.
shit,
And you
well, I
couldn't
guess-
skip the cutscene.
Yeah, and you couldn't skip it.
Oh,
You just
that's
stop.
super wild.
Yeah, dude, it was wild.
But yeah, overall, I enjoyed it,
Yeah.
but I don't know if it's for everybody. Like it did take me a bit of effort to want to get back into it. And once I got into it, I got into it. But for me, I think at the end of the day, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5.
So I wonder, can it be for everybody? Roger Pokorny, what did you think of Crisis Core?
Yeah, this is a weird one for me because I started with Final Fantasy VII Remake, right? So I did not start with like playing or even knowing anything about Crisis Core. So I understood it was a remaster. I understood it wasn't a full remake, but the game looks so good that I expected a little bit more of a modern day upgrade in a lot of ways. And coming into this game, it is very apparent that it is a PSP game. In every, like, you play the first 15 to 20 minutes of this game, you know what the next 10, 12 hours are of it. And I will say that I did put a lot of time into it. Like I did do a lot of the VR missions, and I think that's where the game shines, right?
Yes.
Like the actual gameplay of it is my favorite part of it, and that is what kept it together for me for so long. But I do think that I'm kind of the opposite with Blessing, right? Blessing says that like in the beginning of the game, it was hard for him to get into it, and at the end, it kind of came together for him. For me, it was like kind of like slow hits throughout the entire time. Like I loved the game in the beginning, and then like 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 hours by it, I was like, I'm done with this. I honestly feel like I'm closer to a 2 than I am to a 3. Damn. I would probably say a 2 out of 5. But I would say that it was worth my time as like somebody who wants to know about Final Fantasy VII. Like I do care about that ending. I think that ending did hit for me. The implications for what it might mean for the next game is really interesting to me. But I don't necessarily think that this is worth $50. And I honestly think that this is kind of a very weird and almost money grubbing move from Square Enix, because it does look really amazing, but there's so many things that just were not changed in this that I feel like should have been changed. Like quite honestly, the amount of fade to blacks, the weird transitions, it does not feel like it is a $50 video game. And yeah, it's a disappointing thing for me, because I think this game is so close to like a masterpiece, honestly. Like in this modern generation,
Wow,
I truly feel like this could have been like, if they put in the time to remake and rewrite this dialogue and actually give it the treatment that Final Fantasy VII Remake had, it could have become like that level of story.
yes.
But
You're
it
so
just
right.
it just doesn't. It just doesn't have it, and that's what sucks about it, because I see it all, and I just don't care about any of these characters other than Zack. Like I care about Zack. I like Zack. I don't like Angeal. Like I don't like Genesis, and that sucks to me, because like I wanted to. Like I came into this with like the most. You can Tim. You can test this. I came into this with a really big open mind.
Roger was
and it sucks.
stoked about this, and like in the early times, he was like, "Dude, I'm loving this game," and I was like,
Yeah.
I am shocked about it." Like, fuck yeah, let's go. And then yesterday I was talking to you like, "Oh, I do not like it." I'm like, "Holy crap!" But again, I think that this is a very interesting conversation. And Roger, like, I do not think anything you said there is wrong. But so before we get to the spoiler big section, just real quick, Michael, what would you give it out of 5?
It's hard because I'm working at GameSpot for many years. Like we worked on a 10-point scale. And if I were to review it, I would give it like a 7. So then now it's like, okay, well, do I lean towards a 3 or a 4? And I think it's hard because like my heart's still there with all the things that it did. Like the combat's still satisfying to me, I think. Especially like once you open up all your materia slots and start figuring out how to use Zack in the way that you want, it's like it feels heavy, like you're really laying it down with your spells and your attacks. And when you mix and match AP moves with MP, like with magic and all that stuff, it is very satisfying. And I think it's such an important piece of the broader Final Fantasy lore, and I think it's important for people to realize. So in that regard, I'm like, yeah, I would highly recommend this for anyone. But there is a difference of going from, if you played OG Final Fantasy VII and then you got Crisis Core, a lot of it makes sense because you kind of already know what the journey was.
Yeah.
And then you're filling in gaps that you've always wondered about. Whereas now, like, there are a lot of people who've played 7 Remake only and then go into Crisis Core, like, I have no fucking idea what any of this is. So I get
We'll
that.
get to all that spoiler talk for sure.
So it's kind of hard to where I put that, but in my heart, like you said in your review, in your heart, it's like a 5 out of 5. Highly recommend to anyone who has just a little interest in it. But again, at the end of the day, it is what it is, and I would lean closer to a 3 out of 5 on y'all's scale.
Well, one thing I want to bring up as well, because Roger touched on it a little bit, is dialogue in this game.
Before you do that, let's take a word from our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going into full spoiler mode, and we'll start with the dialogue. Shout out to Fixture Gaming for sponsoring this episode. The Fixture S2 is now available. It's a sturdy accessory mount that connects the Nintendo Switch OLED model to the Pro Controller. This mount was created specifically for the Nintendo Switch OLED model. We here at KindaFunny have been using the Fixture S1 for a very long time. It's been my go-to to play on the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller. Both the S1 and S2 let you take your games anywhere while enjoying the Pro Controller's legendary precision and comfort. No longer will you suffer through Joy-Con drift. The thoughtful design of the Fixture S1 and S2 can be seen in the patented 2-axis system with sturdy metal hinges. Both the S1 and S2 can be used in tabletop mode. If you go to fixturegaming.com, use code KindaFunny, you'll get 5% off of your order. Fixture Gaming is also running a holiday sale on Amazon this week from December 12th to 16th. Get $5 off the Fixture S1 and Fixture S2, $5 off the carrying case bundles, and $10 off the Ultra bundles featuring the Fixture S1, S2, the carrying case, and Fixture's gaming controller. So check it out. Make sure you use promo code KindaFunny. Shout out to MeUndies for sponsoring this episode. Who doesn't love getting new undies for the holidays? Nobody. That's who. MeUndies is your go-to spot for snuggly, soft undies and more that all your loved ones will adore. Get merry in matching sets perfect for binge watching or holiday your way, however you like, with new limited edition prints. You can try MeUndies and get 20% off your first purchase, plus free standard shipping and free returns when you go to MeUndies.com/KindaFunny. You know how much I love MeUndies. I literally don't leave my house unless at least my undies and socks have that super soft micromodal fabric that I talk so much about. You can spend less time gifting and more time living with the new MeUndies holiday collection. MeUndies has something for every name on your list. You can shop classic plaids for dads, holiday sweater prints for fun friends, and the softest loungewear ever. All the cuddly ones in your life could need. Available in sizes extra small to 4XL. It's here for everyone. And you can get 20% off your first order, free shipping, and 100% satisfaction guarantee by going to MeUndies.com/KindaFunny. That's MeUndies.com/KindaFunny. Shout out to Shopify for sponsoring this episode. We love Shopify here at KindaFunny because we use it to run our very own KindaFunny.com/store. Shopify makes it simple to sell to anyone from anywhere. Whether your thing is vintage, teas, or recipes for ghee, start selling with Shopify and join the platform simplifying commerce for millions of your favorite businesses worldwide. Shopify has all the sales channels sorted so your business keeps growing from an in-person POS system to an all-in-one e-commerce platform. And thanks to 24/7 support and free libraries full of educational content, Shopify's got you every step of the way. It's how every minute new sellers around the world make their first sale with Shopify, and you will too. When you're ready to launch your thing into the spotlight, do it with Shopify, the commerce platform backing millions of businesses down the street and around the globe. Go on, try Shopify for free and start selling anywhere. Sign up for a free trial at shopify.com/KFgames, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/KFgames to start selling online today. Shopify.com/KFgames. Shout out to Policy Genius for sponsoring this episode. Life insurance is the type of thing you never hope you need, but the reality is mortgage payments, childcare, and other expenses don't disappear when you're gone. Policy Genius gives you a smarter way to find and buy the right coverage for you and your family. It was built to modernize the life insurance industry. Their technology makes it easy to compare life insurance quotes and from top companies like AIG and Prudential in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $17 per month for $500,000 of coverage. And Policy Genius has licensed agents who can help you find options that offer coverage in as little as a week. They're not incentivized to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. There are no added fees, and your personal info is private. Your loved ones deserve a financial safety net. You deserve a smarter way to find it and buy it. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. Go for it, bless.
And I don't even have spoiler thoughts on the dialogue. It's just the fact that the
it's
dialogues feel it's like some of these lines,
Yeah.
man, is like again in 2000 6 7 when this game came out originally. It's like all right, I can understand back then on a PSP how this dialogue is this way. In 2022, it made me. I think Roger said this right. It made me appreciate Final Fantasy VII Remake more in terms of what dialogue is like in that game because they could have been super faithful to the original in terms of dialogue and had to be super cheesy and had to be this thing of like, what the fuck are y'all even saying? Why is Barrett a racist caricature, right? They fixed so much of that stuff in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, in this one, it seems like the dialogue is one for one for the original.
So that's what's interesting. So for people that don't know, the original game had very limited voice acting. So it was essentially just in the pretty cutscenes, and it was just a handful of characters. And then otherwise, everything else was just text that you just had to click through. You didn't hear anything. And from what I've seen for this one, the dialogue is like unchanged. Some people are telling me that like a line or two or whatever, but like the core, the core of what it is, they haven't touched at all, and they just added voice acting, which I think makes it extra stand out in a bad way because it's now. Before you were just kind of reading it and you're just like, all right, whatever. Now you actually have to hear people say those words, and I think it comes off a little weird.
Yeah. Another thing too for me, like, because they've added voice, like you said, to some of the scenes that didn't have it before, but the way in which it's paced is the most jarring part to me. So like you'll have Zach say something to Aerith, and then Aerith will like pause for like a good 5 seconds and then reply to him. So it's in that regard, it's not just the fact that the voice acting highlights the dated-ish writing, but the way the scenes are directed, it's like, well, now that you like, if I click through it, it's whatever, I'm reading it, but now that you're putting a voice on top of it, the way these characters kind of talk to each other is something's off here. So
we're in the middle of the conversation, but it doesn't matter. Hold on, let me.
Yep. There it is.
For the audio listeners, he's doing sit-ups.
Doing the Zach squats.
Zach squats, baby.
That's how you.
Also, the children voice acting in this game.
Oh, it's so bad.
Dude, it's some of the worst. And like, I want to know who did they get like actual children? Is it adults doing it?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like adults doing children.
It's definitely adults. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but like you would talk to a kid and they would do like the cool pose, which was them just like putting their hands behind their back and one leg up. And they would just like talk to you. It's like, damn, okay, like I didn't know it was like that. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's so awkward, but but that's like the fun things, right? Like that's like the fun part of at least like the jank, right? Like that I leaned into and I was like, okay, I can get down with this. I think once we get into like me laughing at the game during serious moments where it started to lose me, right? Like I was talking to Blessing about this yesterday about like for Final Fantasy VII Remake, like they are really good about knowing their tone and knowing to laugh with the audience. But like for this, like a lot of the humor for me and a lot of the moments that I was laughing at the game for sure. Because it's just super weirdly paced and like even like moments that I know that they're trying to like rip my heart out, even like there's just like a weird like fade to black or a weird line of dialogue that doesn't feel right, or some weird jank animation that just makes me laugh out loud during Genesis spewing his nonsense. So it didn't. That's like a huge part of like it not landing for me at least.
Now something I want to put out there, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, all right.
Genesis, it's not a fan favorite character.
Genesis sucks.
Genesis kind of sucks, and Genesis was okay. So if there was Final Fantasy VII, and then this whole compilation I was telling you about, that they're like, we're gonna put out a bunch of games. They kind of just added Genesis into these games as like, and here's a new bad guy because they can't just keep doing Sephiroth. Here's a different, more poetic Sephiroth, I guess. We did not fuck with Genesis, and it overcomplicated things immediately.
Genesis definitely has an important role in the broader story. So like, it's not that they just inserted like the character for whatever. Like he plays an important role, but dog, I can only hear about Loveless Act 3 so many times, Jesus. Dog. Like, relax. Like we know you like Loveless, Genesis, but that doesn't have to
Somebody
be.
Explain Loveless to me because I didn't understand.
It's his Bible. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
when you get into because we're in spoilers, right? When we get into like the last level or last chapter, and you're reading the
passages.
Yeah, the passages from Loveless.
Which
I was
is
like,
pretty fucking cool. Like symbolically having each room of the cave kind of be one of the different like the challenge and the crisis of the different act of the play. I was like, this is really cool. But just like most things in this game, it's really
Like
cool.
cheesy.
Great idea. Super cheesy. And I don't know that the execution's that great. We keep talking about how people that played the original Final Fantasy VII, this game kind of like filled in gaps of things that we've been thinking about for a long time and like want to know more about or get more characters. Like, what's this character up to? Like those type of things. Playing this game again now, I really feel like I've always been filling in gaps of this game to make it cooler than it actually ever was.
Sure.
You know, or even within this game, because like the pacing is so bizarre where it's like the first half of the game kind of feels like, all right, we're telling a story. Even within that, Angeal jumps from being like your fucking boy to like against you so quickly, and you're like, what the hell's happening? I guess I'll just roll with it. And then by the time you get to the second half of the game, it's like every chapter is just like, and now here's this legacy character, and now here's this legacy character, and now Tifa's in a little cowgirl outfit, and now here's this legacy character, and you're just like, what the fuck is going on? It's like breakneck pace that by the time you get to the end, I've talked about this a million times. Like, this is one of my favorite video game endings of all time. Like, it is so emotional, it's so powerful. But watching it in context, I'm like, man, it's such a great ending that is not built to or not earned at all.
Yeah.
And it's like seeing the DMV thing kind of like break down.
DMV.
DMW.
I kept thinking DMV too.
Seeing that thing break down and get stuck on
now
Aerith
serving
is
number
fucking-
777.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's Sephiroth. Cool, I leveled up.
But like that shit is so special to me and it hits
Yeah.
so hard, but it's like it only hits hard because I really kind of like fill in the gaps of Aerith and Zach's relationship. And I'm team shipping them till the day I die.
Sure. Oh yeah, 1000%. And another like going back to something I said earlier of like having played original 7 then going to Crisis Core OG is I think that because Remake hasn't explored what I think is the most important part of Crisis Core, like what happened in that is the flashback to when spoilers, right? When Sephiroth burned down Nibelheim. Like you get to play through that sequence as from Zach's perspective, and that is probably my favorite like sequence of events in Crisis Core because I remember having that flashback in OG Final Fantasy VII, and you get that shortly after you make it through Midgar. So again, like folks who only played 7 Remake haven't even gotten to that part yet. So when I was playing OG Crisis Core back in the day, I'm like, oh shit! I remember this like kind of at the time I was as a child, I was like, this is really chilling. This is scary. Like Sephiroth burned down this whole town. Yeah, he's the villain. But to play through it in Crisis Core, I'm like, wow, I saw a side of this whole sequence of events that I did not really understand before and got to see it fully realized. Like that whole sequence of Zack carrying Cloud from the Shinra Manor all the way through Nibelheim, fighting off all the soldiers. At the time, I was in tears playing
Straight
this.
up.
Like, it was like, this is your bro, dog. Like Zack fucking put his entire heart into trying to save Cloud, and like from that point on, and the desperation of Zack trying to save Cloud was just this whole emotional sequence of events that just enriched a piece of OG FF7 that, again, like you only saw in a flashback. And even Zack's, if you saw Zack's cutscene in FF7 of his final moments, that shit was cold. It was brutal and it was unceremonious in a way where like, oh, wow, he just got fucking shot in a ditch and that's it. That's the end of him. He just got point blank, execution style. And then when Crisis kind of rewrites that, retcons his heroic ending a little bit more, which I love, obviously. Like that ending is still, Crisis Core's ending is one of the best that we've seen in a very long time. To like kind of rewrite his history, it was like, this is what I always wanted.
Legacy.
Yes, like, he's a legend now. He's a hero, like he always wanted to be. Like Crisis Core was so important to that, and I feel like the people who haven't played that and are still waiting to see that stuff through the remake trilogy, like I could see how playing through Crisis Core now kind of just doesn't really hit the same way.
And I guess I got a couple questions with that.
Sure.
One, I guess this is slightly unrelated, but related, right? Like, so what happened to Cloud? Like, what's going on with Cloud? Like,
chilling,
does he have does he have Zack's memories? Like, you can put a pin on that in a second, because I do want the answer to that. But the other question I have is, why put this game out this way, right? When Final Fantasy VII Remake is not Final Fantasy VII, right? When it is this idea of, cool, we're redoing it. Sephiroth seemingly is like coming through, rewriting the story. This version, and with seeing Zack in the alive in Final Fantasy VII Remake, right? Like, this version of the story seems like it's not the accurate version for the modern remake that they're trying to tell. Like, is there and also it seems like it fits in a weird place in terms of where we left off. Is there a reason why it seems like they're doing it this way as opposed to waiting or not doing it or remaking Reunion.
Bro, let me tell you, I am shook. I am absolutely shook at the fact that this game does not have a post-credit scene, does not have a tee
I
up,
was
does
waiting
not
for it.
have a connection to the remake at all. Because, to echo something you guys have said many times, like Roger specifically, like the writing of remake is like probably my favorite thing about Final Fantasy VII Remake. Like I remember being absolutely blown away playing it for the first time I got to do a preview event and just being like, dude, this writing is good. Like this isn't just like, oh, it's a story I like and they're doing a good job of it. I'm like, Final Fantasy VII might be my favorite game writing ever. Like I just love the way that these characters feel fleshed out and real. And again, they're doing a story that I know and that I love, but it all feels fresh. It feels more mature. It just feels more real. That's all I can say. Human, right? And with this, I totally expected. Like I marked the fuck out at the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake when we see the area that we know playing Crisis Core that Zack dies in, and then we see all of the Shinra people shooting at him. But then he lives, and it's like, what the fuck? What the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
Holy
That
shit!
shit was
And
fucking
that
wild.
to me was like, oh my god! Like I loved Remake, I loved the limitless possibilities. Where are we going from here? And when they announced Reunion being the title of this, I was like, oh, they're probably gonna. I know they're saying it's just a remaster and this whatever, but like they'll change some things or whatever. I'm with you, Bless. I don't understand what the hell they're doing here.
It makes me just even more curious what they're doing with Rebirth, because I imagine like Rebirth is going to be the game that explores this, because this is the part of FF7 where you dive into that sort of stuff. So maybe they're trying to get like OG Crisis Core out of the way. Like, okay, if you want to re-explore what Crisis Core was, go ahead. We have this Reunion thing that you can play on any of your systems. Because when we get to Rebirth, we're going to totally fuck shit up. We're going to rewrite this whole thing. If that's, again, this is all speculation, because who knows what the hell they're doing with the rest of this story based on the ending of Remake Part 1. So in a way, I think that Rebirth is going to go to some wild places where it's not just, okay, we're banking on the backstory of what happened in Crisis Core. Like, no, we're going to rewrite that because it feels like they're essentially rewriting the history of what FF7 was. So like with the whispers and shit, like that is kind of like, when you leave Midgar and you have like surrounded by the whispers and like the whole thing about how, changing fate, different timelines, all this other shit. I'm like, what the hell are y'all doing with this? Because I know that OG Crisis Core is not going to be the only, like Zack's story is, that's not all there is to him. I'm pretty confident in saying that. So it feels like, hey, just remember what this was, because once we get to Rebirth, shit's different. That's how I feel.
Yeah, Raj, like what was your like kind of experience like with the story elements of this, especially towards the end?
Yeah, that was kind of what I landed on too, in terms of the reason why they released it, right? Like they wanted, because this was, correct me if I'm wrong, right? This was only on PSP, never released anywhere else, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So they I assume there was probably some internal like, hey, we should probably remake Crisis Core, and then they probably realized that that's a big task to do. So they're like, okay, well, we want to get that story out there before we rewrite it essentially in the next game. But that, for me, like at that point, right? Like this might be a little controversial to say. I think that they should have just kept the same art style and just up-resed it. Like if you see it on like people already have like 4K versions that they've been doing on emulators, and it looks great. Like it still looks really good. I think once you start going into this uncanny valley of like bringing in all of these new assets, yet all the animation are jank, yet the story is the same. Like it is. I know this is technically it is definitely a different universe than Final Fantasy VII Remake, but it feels like that writing wise and everything else wise. So I feel like just keeping the same art style would have actually done a lot more for this game. But I feel like also if they kept the same art style, then they couldn't charge $50 for it. So I think that's kind of like the mindset, and I think that's also what led me to kind of like not loving the game as much towards the ending, because I started to see through a lot of the choices and the reason why the game is the way it is. But I would say towards the ending of the game, like that whole sequence with Cloud and understanding, because like it's a spoiler, but now they're clearly saying like, we don't care about this, knowing this, like knowing that Cloud isn't a soldier, or wasn't in that program, and he kind of has just taken those, these memories essentially. That's like mind blowing to me, and like that like truly shook me, and has been like in my mind for the last few days, and I'm excited to see where that goes and how they adapt that in the next game for sure. So I'm happy that I played this game to know that.
And that's the thing is I just feel like it's this almost like required reading of like, if you're invested and if you're like, yo, I'm super into stuff, it's like you kind of need to know this stuff even if you don't love it, but like just to understand the kind of like how things happened, and now we're going to see how they're going to be changed or whatever that looks like. But something that I've always found very special about Crisis Core is they lean into a lot of things, but they lean full on into just delivering fan service and hype. Like this very much is just fan service. The game, again, there's 3 characters with 1 wing. It's like y'all are ridiculous right now.
Yeah.
But the game opens and it looks like the opening of Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
But again, better than we've ever seen it. At this point, we've now seen it better because of Final Fantasy VII Remake.
So it doesn't hit the same.
It doesn't hit the same. There's kind of this weird, like, out of time thing going on. The game ends doing the Rogue One thing of legitimately leading right into the beginning of Final Fantasy VII. And it's hype as fuck. And we see Cloud and he's like, I'm first soldier. And you're like, no, you aren't, motherfucker. We saw what just happened. And like, that's so cool and so exciting.
So, like, and I think it's just been, I've been under maybe the wrong impression this whole time of like what's going on with Cloud. Is it that he is trying to honor Zach's legacy by like being Zach, or is his brain fucked and like, is this the question?
Well, let me tell you, Blast. There's a game you got to play called Final Fantasy VII that totally does, like, legitimately. It's not too far after where you stop playing. Like, it does dive into.
Oh boy,
Cloud is the character, and a lot of the stuff is, I would say, some of the less good parts of Final Fantasy VII overall.
It's a little messy, but
it's messy, but cool as shit. There's certain things that work. But again, this goes back to my pacing problem of this story. In Crisis Core, which just kind of like moves for the second half of the game, and it's like, you're introduced, you see Tifa, you get Eris earlier, you get Yuffie earlier, and then it's like, cool, Cloud's here. And you're like, holy shit, Cloud's here. It's kind of like, Raj, was that like a moment for you?
Yeah, it was, but and that's what was interesting about it, is that ending kind of reframes everything, right? Because I see Cloud, I'm like, this is not Cloud. Like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, he's Cloud in name. He looks like Cloud. He's hiding his face. He doesn't want, Tifa to see him. And I'm like, I slowly start putting things together. I'm like, oh, this is not. This is something else is going on that they haven't revealed in Final Fantasy VII. Like, it was cool to see Cloud, but I also don't really necessarily buy the relationship between Zack and Cloud. Like, I just don't think that I personally had enough relationship between those two. Like, and especially since he's like knocked out in a huge part of the game, like towards the ending. Like, I get what they're going for it, and I know that it probably worked better in a portable mindset, like with a lot of this game, but I just didn't see them as like people that were actually too close. And that was something that kind of broke that illusion for
100%,
me.
100%, bro. Like, I mean, that's the thing. That's what I was saying, where it's like, even now, you have to do kind of a lot of filling in the gaps of like, no, but they were boys, man, and they fucking loved each other. And it's like, why? It's like, well, they did because he dragged him and you had to like fight through it. Like, you as the player kind of relate to Cloud more. It's like, there's a lot of just like putting things together thematically that make it add up. And like, again, it's like, I realize how many like verbal gymnastics I'm doing here to explain this, but it's like, but that's what this is.
You're talking about like what video games were in 2007, right? Where it is like you're coming off the PS2 era, and I feel like everything was filling in the gaps, right? Like even thinking about my time playing Kingdom Hearts, and it's like, how many gaps I need to fill in to like understand that? Oh no, this is a story driven by emotion and driven by magic and the power of friendship.
You start talking.
That's what solves everything here.
You start talking to like trying to explain to people like why Crisis Core is so dope. You sound like a madman. You sound like a Kingdom Hearts fan. I'm like, oh, you're not too far off. Like Zack himself is like a Kingdom Hearts ass character.
Straight up. I mean, like think about like Kingdom Hearts, if anything, is just reverence to the one-winged angels, right?
Sure,
it is that same type of fan service and that same type of just like, yo, this is cool. And if I think it's cool, a lot of other people are going to think it's cool, and they're fucking right. You know?
And I think like to Crisis Core's credit, I think if anything, it explores Sephiroth in a really important way. Because playing through Remake, like we just know that Sephiroth is the bad guy. We don't know too much about him through Remake Part 1, but Crisis Core, like, oh, he really humanizes the character rather than just being some bad guy who burned down a village and Cloud has terrible memories of. And having Genesis and Angeal in place to kind of frame who Sephiroth is and why he turned into a madman. I think those moments still really hit. Like when Sephiroth is in Shinra's manor, kind of uncovering all of these, going nuts. Like that stuff is, I think, probably today maybe as important as just knowing what happened to Zack and seeing that through. I still think it has an important place in the context of things today. And like, I don't know, like there's just you mentioned the music, and some of that music still evokes a lot of those similar emotions. Even like just the song, like when you first go to Benora Village, and just like that cool like
The Price of
Western
Freedom,
guitar,
dude.
then Price of Freedom, just
Oh.
like it was really emotional riff, and as soon as you hear it, you know exactly what it means.
Yes.
And just some of the battle themes are just like heavy,
Killer.
crunchy ass metal guitars going off. Like this soundtrack spans a lot of different genres.
Yeah.
And it does still come together. And there's like really catchy riffs
And
whenever
it
you go.
ends with just a straight up anime music video.
Yep. Yeah.
The fucking song "Why" that I've listened to 1,000 times in my life, and it's just they just go all out. They're like,
That
"Fuck
part.
it, we're just gonna like give you this."
Those parts still work. And like when I was replaying the original PSP version, and like when you return to Benora Village for that final sequence, just like that simple guitar riff that plays in that song, it was like, damn, you kind of feel like it's gonna end. Like this is coming to an end, and feel a little sad about it.
Question, which I'm sure I would know the answer if I played the original Final Fantasy VII. Who was in the coffin?
It's Vincent,
Oh,
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Vincent is a vampire that is like
He's chilling.
yeah.
Hey, yo, there's some. When I think about it, there's some wild shit going on in Shinra Manor. Like
straight up. Yeah,
Shinra is a wild dude.
Yeah.
He's got a vampire in his
Man
basement.
said vampire with the straightest face. ever.
Vincent is a vampire. He was an optional character in the
Yeah.
original Final Fantasy VII.
He's
Him and Yuffie were like the two optional characters. So I
Vincent's
imagine
fucking
that
cool,
we
though.
might get in the same way we got Intergrade, which was like a Yuffie DLC story. I could see us getting a Vincent side story at some point. But we also did get Dirge of Cerberus, which you played as Vincent. It was like a third-person shooter game, and it was horrible. And Genesis was in that.
What are the chances they do like?
I
like,
played that for IGN at some point, so
That's
yeah.
hilarious.
Sorry.
You're talking about Vincent and then guns and stuff.
He's
I'm
a
like,
vampire.
oh yeah.
Do you think they do DLC for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? That's like
Vincent but
yeah, like Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy VII Rebirth Dirge of Cerberus.
Honestly, I would have thought so. I mean, timeline-wise, I don't think that'll add up, right?
Sure,
Because
yeah.
Dirge of Cerberus is like, if I remember correctly, like
it's like the
the
final
latest
moments.
thing that we've had
Yeah.
so far.
Or-
Maybe Advent Children? I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
I mean, yo, this shit goes deep, Ron, and Bless, and one day I'm going to invite all y'all motherfuckers to my house, and we're
Hell
going to
yeah.
watch Advent Children, and you're going to fucking see what's
Hell
up.
yeah.
Because that adds all this other shit to this. And,
Yeah, yeah.
a big thing of that movie is the word reunion. And I'm, like, a little interested that they called Crisis Core Reunion.
Mhm.
I wonder what the significance... Square Enix knows what the fuck they're doing when it comes to naming. I'm not saying the name well, but they have a reason for what they're
Yeah,
doing,
yeah.
right? So I'm like, that's weird to me that they did that and didn't change shit.
yeah. I thought that was going to be a reference to, isn't it like the integrate like final like extra moment of like Zack going to Aerith's church and then her not being there. So I thought that maybe was going to be a reference to that. Maybe that was going to be like the post credit scene. But yeah, it's weird. Reunion's it's a weird one.
Especially because it fits in with the naming scheme of remake, reunion, rebirth, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I was very much expecting a post credits. I was very shocked that there wasn't one. But also, I guess I think it's that weird thing of, all right, do you add one or do you just keep it the same game because you want to honor the idea of, hey, we want people to have this like frame of reference for what the original was untouched, so that when we do touch it, right, like it's more meaningful.
They don't have to retread like I don't know. I feel like they just don't have to retread that ground anymore. Like, so if you go into Rebirth and like, we don't need to go through, because initially finishing Remake, I thought that, okay, they're going to integrate a piece of Crisis Core into
Exactly.
part 2, into
Yeah.
Remake part 2. We didn't know at the time it was called Rebirth, but it's like, okay, they're going to bring Crisis Core into that, and that's how we're going to experience Crisis Core in this broader scheme. So, yeah, and that's not going to be the case so much.
Maybe it will.
Yeah,
That's the
but
thing.
but like,
maybe
like
that's why this
completely-
was not a remake at all.
yeah,
right?
Just like completely rewriting that though, and that's the thing that gets integrated into Rebirth.
good.
So,
But yeah, Bless, going back to what you were saying earlier about like what's up with Cloud. I think Raj, you too. Like, is he like why is he the way he is? Like, is he a soldier? Is he Zack? Like, is he like faking it or whatever? And like the answer is it's told in the story a little bit. It's definitely told more in Final Fantasy VII original, but like the pacing of the last half of this game is so bizarre where it's like you're just going, where it's like there's like a 3 to 5 year time jump in it.
Dude,
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
I had to go
And
back.
you really need to like,
I
be like,
missed
did
it.
that happen? And then the other thing is like, you start really questioning, like, all right, so I get it, cool, they were like asleep or they were like being experimented on by Hojo for 3 years,
Yeah.
but everyone else in the story was just kind of waiting for them to come out to then keep the story going. Like that never made sense to me.
I thought it was a time travel thing. Like I couldn't.
Oh,
I like
also
could not
thought
wrap
that.
around it. Yeah,
I had to like go
exactly.
back and look up like what happened because I don't understand
same.
why it's 4 years later all of a sudden.
Anime time skips, baby. You know the vibes.
But really, like the shortest version of the answer is they were experimented on, the two of them.
Yeah.
Like you can imagine, like there was a lot of shit. So it's like Cloud is not faking thinking he's a soldier. He truly believes he is. Like he truly believes the memories that he has of that are actually Zach's, but like he takes them on as his. And I definitely we're going to get a lot deeper into that.
I can't wait because I did play the Nibelheim portion of the original Final Fantasy.
Oh, you
VII
did?
when I went
Okay.
back and played that,
Yeah.
right? And I played like it was nice.
Right, yeah.
It was also cool. Like I'm sure y'all have already experienced this feeling, right? Of like going to Costa del Sol and being like, oh shit, I remember this place from Final Fantasy VII, the original. I'm sure you guys have felt that a lot, but like that was like a thing where I was like, oh shit, and then going like walking around Nibelheim, I was like, oh shoot, it's actually pretty cool, right? And like I can't wait to see how they tackle this Final Fantasy VII Rebirth being open world, possibly seeing in that original trailer that they showed earlier in the year of I think it was Cloud and Sephiroth walking together in in open space. It seems like they're gonna tackle that stuff, and they kind of have to. But yeah, I can't wait to see what that Nibelheim scenario looks like because that's gonna be dope as fuck.
Yeah, and we go to Junon in this, right? With the place with the big ass like kind of like missile or like what would you even call that? Like the thing that the Sephiroth and them fight on.
Yeah, it's like a big ass fucking cannon.
Yeah, giant ass cannon thing they're on. And that cutscene is like
so good.
It's just legitimately one of the coolest fucking things ever in video games. And seeing it and being like, oh shit, they're there because that's like a prominent location in the original game. And you're like, fuck, that's super cool. And then you get this dope ass fight. It just keeps getting cooler. And then it's revealed that was all like a fucking X-Men Danger Room VR training. And I'm like, this game is just rad, y'all. And then it gets really weird and convoluted. Raj, any final thoughts on Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII?
Yeah, I mean, really quick, I just wanted to bring up the voice acting because I know this was something that was brought up from a lot of fans, and I know Tim, you talked about how this is a different voice actor from Zach. I think that's another criticism for me is that a lot of the specifically Zach's voice lines did not land for me, and I don't know if that's I think it's a mixture of the writing and voice actor or whatever it is, but yeah, that was something that took me out of that experience. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I replayed Crisis Core shortly after remake. And so that the memories of OG Zach voice acting is very fresh in my mind. So going into
it's showtime.
Yeah,
way cooler original.
The delivery of OG's like no shade against the new voice actor, and I think it's standalone on its own. Like it's still a good performance, but I mean there's an attachment. There's a certain delivery and emotion that we understand Zach to be, especially in the final moments, in the ending with the way he emphasizes certain words, the desperation you hear in his voice. I feel like the delivery was more in tune with how I envisioned Zach to be in that original game. So I do feel like some people will do a side-by-side comparison and like, I don't really see the difference, but I do. And it's not bad, but I do kind of, I miss OG Zach.
Me too. I'm right there with you, where I don't think that this one was horrible by any means, but like it lacked that special quality. But I did like the rest of the voice cast.
Everyone else
the
on point.
Final Fantasy VII Remake cast, like Aerith being voiced by Brianna White, I think is really cool because it gives it a little bit more of continuity, which again, Raj, to your point, it's a little weird where it's almost as if just don't do that. Just remaster this, put it out more as like a up-resed port as opposed to like this thing that it looks and sounds like Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's not Final Fantasy VII.
So weird. Yeah.
Any final thoughts, Bless?
Not really. For folks, I guess if you haven't played it, you wouldn't made this far into the spoiler cast. But I guess in that case, I'm just excited for more Final Fantasy VII. Rebirth right now is probably in my top 2 most anticipated games, right? Like for next year, right? Maybe top 3. Like between that, Starfield, and Spider-Man 2 right now. Like I cannot wait.
Bless.
What up?
I think you're forgetting one. Starts with the Z, ends in an Elda.
Oh God! Never mind. Throw everything out.
Fake fans. We got fake fans
Zelda
here.
Tears of the Kingdom is coming out next year. Everybody is Game of the Year.
He used to be an Ocarina of Time defender. And now look at him.
Wow! Look at me! Look at me! Wow! Wow! Hey, dude, we're gonna get Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Final Fantasy 16.
And
I
16
do
in the
think
same year.
Rebirth is going to be like an early 2024 joint, but I mean, I'm not gonna complain. Like, I don't think Square Enix is gonna put out 16 and then Rebirth in the same year. Like,
Hey,
let's spread them.
They put out Stranger of Paradise and
Yeah, the
Crisis
real
Core
goat.
the same year.
You know what I'm saying?
The real two goats of the year. Let's go. Stranger of
go.
Paradise, everybody.
Stranger Paradise, baby. That's some real shit right there for y'all.
Michael, where can people find you? Thank you for hanging out with us, by the way.
Yeah, of course, anytime. I live right down the block, so is great. You can find me in all my bullshit at Michael P. Higham on Twitter, and you can go to hitvideogamewebsite fanbyte.com. Also, you should peep. Some of the folks at Fanbyte are doing their own projects, such as Imran Khan, who has a Patreon called Pros and Cons. With his last name Cons, he's a friend of the show.
And the
so
pros is like
riding, because he's a writer.
PROSE.
Yeah, and yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Whoa.
Open your third eye. You know?
Whoa.
But yeah, sometimes I'm on the pod. Sometimes I'm on his podcast called Materia Possessions, in which we talk about RPGs specifically. And also, If You're Driving, Close Your Eyes is from John, Elby, and Nikki, fine folks I used to work with at Fanbyte, doing their own comedy podcast. That's cool. But and you should be GameSpot After Dark, which I was on last week.
Hell yeah.
I'm still rocking with the GameSpot folks, and yeah, that's where you can find me.
Well, there you go, everybody. Let us know in the comments below how excited you are for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. If you are planning on playing Crisis Core Reunion and anything else. Final question for you, Michael.
Yeah.
Why is it called Crisis Core?
Because at its core, there's a fucking crisis, dog.
Until next year. This is the last Gamescast. This is the final Gamescast of the year.
Oh,
Thank
shit.
you all for hanging out with us. We're going to return with a couple banger episodes leading into our Game of the Year conversation. Can't wait for that. Have a lot of fun things planned. But until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.
Peace.